Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you all of the books that I read in the month of September. I read 16 different books in the month of September. I'm just gonna kind of share them off this stack, and then we'll touch into the ones that I read on Kindle. I think I have 4 or 5 that I read on Kindle Unlimited. That's crazy for me. The first book that I read in the month of September was The Tease by Lauren Layne. This book was so good, and I honestly didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I normally do not like books where, well, the trope in this book is dad's best friend and age gap. And I normally do not like books at all where the trope is dad's best friend, because most of the time the age gap is just too big to a point to where it gets kind of creepy, because sometimes the authors that write under that trope, they'll have it to where like the MMC knew the girl as a child. Can't do that. Those types of books just don't work for me. If he knew you when you were 13 years old, I'm kind of weirded out. That's not the case with this one. He must have been young when she was born, because her dad's only 49 and his best friend is only 40. She is 25, so the age gap is 25 years, so it's nothing too weird. Jules and the MMC, for once, I can't remember the MMC's name. They meet at the beginning of the book at a secret, spicy, underground masquerade party. It's fast-paced from the start. They meet at this party and Jules is there as the pianist. She's not even there as the guest of the party. And they just hit it off immediately. I didn't go to the exclusive after-hours masquerade to kiss my dad's best friend. I didn't even know who the masked man was. It's also, I guess, a little bit of forbidden romance. Like, this can't be a thing. They also kind of work together, so this really can't be a thing, but they make it a thing. I rated this book 4 stars. The spice in this book was also really good. I'm just gonna chunk them on my bed. Next, we have Take a Hint, Dani Brown. This is the second book in the Brown sister series. I ended up listening to this one on audiobook through my library. I loved this book, mostly for the fact that the MMC was so obsessed with the FMC, and that is one of my favorite. I don't know if that's necessarily a trope or if it's just a micro trope, but that is one of my, I love it. I eat that up. And they were just friends at the beginning, so it was kind of friends to lovers, and then there was some fake dating in there. But from the beginning, this man had a thing for her. Also, Zafir was a former rugby player, and he read romance books for fun. And he has emotional intelligence. I read these 3 in a reading vlog. Go watch this if you want my full thoughts on these books, but I'll touch on them a little bit here. To Serve with Love. This was the first book that I read in that reading vlog, and I ended up rating it 5 stars, but I think I'm actually gonna knock it down half a star and give it 4.5 stars. And that's not because I don't love it. It's simply because I forgot the main character's name and what happened in this book. Like, I genuinely, 2 days after reading it, I swear I forgot everything. And if that happens to me, I don't think the book was actually 5 stars. Because when I rate a book 5 stars, it's kind of like ingrained in my soul a little bit. I won't forget the main character's names after 2 days. Have a little bit of enemies to lovers in here. And lovers to lovers. And a little bit of a love triangle, kind of. It was good. The next book that I read in that video was Still Beating. I don't own this book. I read it on Kindle Unlimited. This is a dark romance. Emphasis on dark. Check the trigger warnings. I rated this book 3.5 stars, and the 2 main characters at the beginning of the book both get taken. It's Taken 2.0. Both of them. And it was so heartbreaking to read, and I'm not sure if they would have fell in love had this horrific situation ever happened, but that's okay. The next book that I read in that video was The Bodyguard by Kathrine. I rated this book 4 stars or 4.5 stars. Somewhere around there. The thing I love the most about this book is the FMC was such a bad, and she made me want to step up my game. She made me want to take Krav Maga for real and get to a point to where I could beat the shit out of anybody. Like, you would look at me and you'd be like, she's not, what is she gonna do? As they think about her. And then she just like takes care of every situation. I want to be able to do that now. And the MMC in this book, what's his name? Jack Stapleton. This man is Chris Evans. The last book that I read in that video was The Bronze Horseman. This is a historical romance, and I think this is the first historical romance that I've ever read, and I loved it, and I rated it 5 stars. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, and this is one of those books where if you read it, you have to remember it was a different time, okay? There is a love triangle in this book too, and I actually, while it made my blood boil, I didn't absolutely despise it. Or maybe I did. It made me really angry. For most of this book, I was angry. But that's okay. That was kind of the point. Also, there was the war going on, and that was really heavy. Check the trigger warnings. There are so many different triggers in this book. But overall, it was really good. There are 2 more books in this series, but with the way this one ended off, I'm still recovering. so I probably won't read those for a while. Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. This is the third book in the Knock 'Em Out series. Things We Never Got Over is still my favorite out of all three of these books. For some reason, that book is ingrained in my soul and has like a special place in my heart, and I love it so much. I didn't necessarily love Things We Hide from the Light, the second one. And this one, I liked it better than the second one, but this is one of those books where I think if I read it a second time, I will like it even more than I did the first time around. It had some issues or some things that I was like, didn't love that. But overall, I liked it. I rated it 3.5 stars. I did feel like the ending was a little bit abrupt. I know the main characters, they hated each other for years. They hated each other for years. I know they like had that tension for years, so maybe it wasn't abrupt to some people, but I was like, oh my God, that was, whoa. And normally I love love bombing. Love bombing works on me. Lucian, the MMC in this book, does remind me of Christian Harper from Twisted Lies. Suit daddy, hot man. Also read these 3 books in another reading vlog. Go watch this if you want my full thoughts on the books. The first one that I read in that video was The Ex Hex by Erin Sterling, and despite the mixed reviews on this book, I loved it. But I think it's because I love Hocus Pocus and Halloween Town, and this was very much those vibes, but with spicy romance. Oh no, a spell or a hex has been put on the town, we must fix it. Oh no! I read Illuminae next. Very much YA dystopian, AI has taken over. My go-to books are silly little romance books, so this was a good kind of break away from the normal that I'm reading. I rated this book 4 stars. The last book that I read in that reading vlog was You Again, and if you watch that video, you know that I didn't give a rating on this book because I didn't know how to rate it. I think it was written very well, but after thinking about it for a week, I still feel lost on it, and I still don't know what to think. So because of that, I think it's just not the book for me. I feel like if this was a movie, I would love it, but for some reason, it just wasn't my type of book. Simply because when I'm reading, I'm fully trying to escape. That is how I pick my books, fully for escapism. And this was just so real and raw, and I think I was feeling too much. I also read this when I was on my period. This just continually emotionally wrecked me over and over and over again. For what? 300, 400 pages, 400 pages. One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I think this is my new favorite fantasy book, mostly because of the gothic vibes that were within this. It very much gave me this picture. This is the energy I got from reading this book the entire time. The town or kingdom of Blunder, they're mist locked, so they have this mist across the town, or I guess mostly in the wooded areas where you can't go into the mist. It's very dangerous. It's kind of haunting the town a little bit. There's also the sickness going around the town, and if you get the sickness, they you or they send you into the mist. Elspeth, I'm gonna call you Elle. Elle, when she was a kid, got the sickness, and her family didn't want her to obviously die, so they hid her and took care of her until she could recover from the sickness. But when she recovered, she kind of adopted this magic, and so now the nightmare lives within her, and for the past 10 plus years she's had this monster living in her, and no one knows. She hasn't told anybody, but there's this like creepy eerie voice in her head, and he's been with her this entire time now. A maiden must unleash the monster within to save her kingdom in this dark, lush, gothic fantasy debut. The last physical copy book that I read was The Best Laid Plans by Karla Sorensen. I read it an entire day. It comes out on October 3rd. It was a good book. I'm gonna rate it 3.5 stars. I did love the beginning, and it kind of fell short for me the last half or third of the book. You do need to check the trigger warnings with this book because there is a lot of mention of grief within it, so check the trigger warnings. Burke, the MMC, ends up losing his best friend right at the beginning of the book, and his best friend and his family, they end up leaving Burke this mansion that his grandparents used to live in back in like northern Michigan, and Burke's like, what the f do I do with this mansion? Why would he leave this to me? What am I gonna do with a mansion, let alone a historical mansion that is falling apart? The FMC in this book is the project manager of that mansion, so when Burke goes up there to figure out what's going on and what he's getting himself into, first off, he sees this mansion that is like falling apart. And then in the first scene these characters are meeting, he sees Charlotte, who's handcuffed herself to the staircase as a way to like, I don't think she even knows, as a way to convince him that this mansion will be worth his time and he shouldn't sell it. The banter at the beginning of this book from the start was really good. They were just like bickering a lot, but not in an annoying way, in like a very cute way. And then there's forced proximity because they end up staying in the guest house together because the mansion is not livable. And he couldn't get a hotel room because there was a soccer tournament or something in town. So he had to stay in the in the twin bed. Former football player. This man is a mammoth. Yeah, it did have one of those sentences towards the end of it. You know what? So did One Dark Window. One of those sentences where it was like, everything was good till it wasn't. And you're sitting here as a reader like, what the f? Why would you say that? Now I feel like I'm getting hunted for sport right now because my anxiety is so bad. Now we're getting into the fun stuff. The books that I read on Kindle. The first one being Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. 5-star book. If you like the Mind series, I think you'll like this book. Check the trigger warnings, man. Check them. But also, take the trigger warnings with a grain of salt because one of the trigger warnings is accidental cannibalism and another one is cannibalism. But just know, those are weird trigger warnings to have on a romance book. The cannibalism, it's not the main characters. They're the accidental cannibalism. So don't worry about you reading about main characters. They're not cannibals. It's fine. They're two serial killers who kill serial killers. And they meet at the beginning of the book and they kind of make this game between them where once a year they'll meet and they'll kill a serial killer and kind of see who can kill them first. Also, it was interesting because the FMC Sloane, while she was such a bad like killing people, when it came to the real world and she wasn't in a scenario or she wasn't in a situation where she was going to be like offing somebody, she was actually like a very anxious person and like would overthink things. And when it was from her point of view, you were like, oh my god, same girl, same. Then obviously it would switch to her like offing somebody and you'd be like, not same, but like cool. Also Rowan, the MMC, what a great name. He lived up to it too. He was hot. And the next book in this, what's going to be, I think, an interconnected series is going to be about Rowan's brother and Sloane's best friend, who we get to see them in this first book. And I need that book now because Brynne Weaver posted this on her Instagram story. This being the first line from that book. Yeah, I need that book now. A Soul to Keep. This was my first dabble into demon romance. Oh my god. If me 2 years ago heard that sentence, she would laugh in my face. My first dabble into demon romance. I didn't love it. I did like the MMC in this book, Orpheus. I'm so bad at pronunciation. I'm also really bad at spelling, but this is his name. I do want to give him a hug, even though he's not really a him, but he kind of is. This is the demon. I just got bored throughout most of this book. Not even weird. I wasn't even weirded out. I was just bored. Like he takes this human girl and he's trying to force her to like be his love or something. I wasn't even weirded out by that. I was just bored. After that, I read Her Soul to Take by Harley Laroux. My second dabble into demon romance. This one was good. I really liked this one. I gave this like 4.5 stars. The town that this was based in gave me very much like Mystic Falls vibes. And on top of there being this like demon romance happening, there was also a lot of culty things within this book, and I love anything cults. You throw a cult topic into a romance book, into a dark romance book, I'm hooked immediately. Wow, the MMC in this book was a demon? He knew what consent was. Even a demon knows what the word no fucking means. If you're thinking about dabbling into demon romance, start with this one. Check the trigger warnings, but start with this one. The last book that I read in the month of September and on Kindle was Manhunt. I rated this book 2 stars. Didn't love this book. This one felt like a book that I would read when I was 13 years old. I don't mind normally when reading books when an author is like, oh, she was really small and he was really large. On occasion, you're gonna read books like that. If you mention it a couple times, I'm like, aw. If you mention it 8 times a chapter, I start to get weirded out. Did I read it in a night? Yes. That's because I started it at 11 p.m. and I wasn't gonna not finish it. It wasn't like an unreadable book. That was just one quirk that I didn't love about it, and I just kept yelling at my Kindle, we get it. She's tiny and he's huge. We get it. Ah! We get it! Those are all the books that I read in the month of September. I am going to have a video with my October TBR coming out tomorrow because I have a lot of spooky books that I want to read that I want to share with you guys, so be on the lookout for that video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!